We're here with Tramm01 from TTR, Rex Trammel, and the famous Dave Stark, Oxbow on TTR. How are you gentlemen this morning?
Doing well.
Doing well.
Good deal. Well, Dave, you used to be a ski instructor.
Yeah, once upon a time.
About back in 1976.
Yep. Started. Well, I'd always skied growing up, and then I loved it so much, and I managed to talk the mountain manager into hiring me when I was in high school, and I taught on weekends for a couple of years, and then taught full-time the year after that, and then decided that I really didn't like hanging around the people at ski areas 150 days a year after that, so that was the end of my ski teaching career.
Gotcha. And then year after 1977 to 82, you're a ranch hand.
Yes. Okay. Northern Nevada or Northern Idaho for 3 years, and then in Nevada for a year.
Okay. What's involved with being a ranch hand? Is it kind of like Yellowstone that you see on TV?
Well, I've never seen Yellowstone. I'd like to, but I don't get that. But
It's nothing like it.
it's a lot of work. 2 guys calving out 1,000 cows. Crappy weather in Northern Idaho in February, March. One guy checks them midnight, and then 4 in the morning, the other guy checks them at 10 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night, and then you're working all day feeding, and then of course you have one that you have to pull and this and that. Yeah, so for 2 months straight, actually I was, the last year I was there was when I was engaged to my wife. I wasn't engaged yet, I guess, but we were dating. And I told her in January, I said, well, I'm not going to see you for a couple months. And she said, how come? Well, it's calving season. And I didn't. It was almost 2 months of the day before I could get back to town to see her.
Right.
So it's her own fault for getting involved with this mess. She had fair warning.
82, and then 82 to 86 is when you got into your first foray, I guess, dirt contracting?
Yes. Worked for a contractor in Twin Falls, and bright guy, really good dirt mover. He had textbooks on how to move dirt, and taught me a lot. And then farm economy was kind of sad right then, and he struggled, and then I ended up moving on from there.
Okay. Why was he struggling?
Most of his work was based on land leveling and whatnot around Twin Falls, which at the time was all flood irrigated. And the farm economy, like I said, was really poor, and farmers just didn't have the money to do improvements much. And there wasn't a lot of other places to go. It wasn't like now where there's tons of site development and this and that and everything else. And he just couldn't quite keep his head above water.
Okay.
I know the feeling, I think. Bottom for
So after 86, you were a company driver?
Yep, worked for a guy in Salmon named Gary Boyce, passed away a year or so ago. Fantastic guy. Wasn't really a typical truck owner. Gary had worked for UPS for a while, and then he bought a Pepsi distributorship in Salmon, and then he sold that and decided that he was going to get into trucking, and developed a route going back and forth to California. And he would run 1 week and I'd run 3 weeks on the one route. And then he had another truck for a while. That didn't pan out so good for him, so he just got down to the one, and I worked for him for 2.5 years, I think.
Okay. What kind of truck were you running? Was that the first truck you...
1980 Freightliner cab over with a Cat A model, 13-speed, rough riding.
No air conditioning?
Oh, it had air conditioning, yeah.
Was that the first truck you actually drove?
No, that was back when I was learning to move dirt. And that was a 1970 Pete with a 318 and a 5 and a 4 and Hendrickson pad suspension that he pulled his lowboy with.
318 was the old Detroit, was it?
Two-stroke Detroit, yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones that would run backwards.
8V71, yeah, and you can run them either direction.
Yep. Okay. They did that for about 3 years. You said you ran like Sunday through Thursday?
Yeah, so I would leave out. Well, when I was working for Gary, it was actually a little different schedule. I think I'd leave out Tuesday morning about 4 in the morning, run up this area and load potatoes or hides and Roberts or something and haul that down to the Bay Area and load newspaper inserts in the Bay Area. And that first run, the first drop was Logan, Utah, and then over to Rock Springs, Rollins, Casper, Billings, Great Falls, Missoula, and then back down we'd do Idaho Falls or Pocatello, and then I was home and start all over again the next week. I'd run 3 weeks of that and he'd run 1 week.
And for reference, I guess, we're in the Pocatello, Idaho area.
Yes.
If anybody didn't know.
That would help.
If you couldn't tell.
Chubbuck.
Chubbuck. And then from there, I guess you got the smart idea to get your own authority and do it yourself.
Well, I started off, I just wanted my own truck, and Gary was a super good guy to work for, and I just had the itch. And there was a new outfit starting in Twin Falls that had a contract hauling IBP meat, and I think I had $2,500 down that I put on my first truck and a hope and a prayer. And but the gal was excited that was running that company to lease me on, and somehow I talked the bank into it, and away we went. And I sold that one. And
What was the truck?
83 Pete, 359 with a A model Cat, 13 speed. That one had air ride suspension though. It was cool.
A step up.
Traded that in '89 for, or no, must have been 90 or 91 for a T600. Thought it was time to grow up and go after fuel mileage. Learned that really didn't gain very much, because when you're stuffing all that air through that little tiny radiator and you're running the heat in the summer and one little tiny air filter instead of 2 big ones, it got a little better mileage, but it wasn't much better.
Okay.
Anyway, and had that, bought my own trailer about then, a spread axle reefer. Did that till '94, and I got bored and decided it was time for me to get out.
So sold truck and trailer?
Yep. Actually, I was in Kansas, and I called home. It was 4th of July. My wife was in tears. She said, well, here's another holiday, and you're not here. And I thought, so that had a lot to do with it, too. That was probably most of it.
Right.
Biggest thing was I was bored.
Okay.
I started entertaining myself in not very wise ways. When they first built the port of entry at St. George going northbound, statute of limitations is over by now, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, goody. Here comes the fun stuff.
I don't know. I won't even get started on the mafia type deals.
That was my first experience with weigh-in motion scales out on the freeway.
All right.
And they'd spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars on building that place, but it was and probably still is, a combined port between Arizona and Utah.
Yep.
So even though they had all this fancy equipment and weigh-in motion, blah, 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 you still had to go in and take your Arizona card in and get them to punch that at the time. And
Oh, is that the old bingo card days?
no, this was after bingo, but before.
You'll have to explain bingo.
Before IFTA, I think.
You'll have to explain bingo cards too.
So the bingo cards was basically your ICC authority, your MC number, but you had to communicate with and apply to each state individually. And so you would have a bingo card that
Had all
looked
the
like a
states
bingo
on it.
card that you had stickers from all the states that you had done. And if you didn't run back east, you didn't have to do all those, but all the stickers you had was on there. And then in those days, you had to have a big truck just because you had to paint tons of lines for whatever state you were on the side of the
Right.
truck too.
Yep.
And then I don't remember for sure. I believe, well, part of that was with IRP too, with the International Registration Plan. Before you had to register license for each state individually, separate from your ICC authority. And that was a hassle. It was a nightmare. Paperwork was substantial then. And then I can't remember whether IFTA or IRP came in first, but it was all about the same time.
Yep.
And IFTA, same thing, a fantastic deal because you no longer had to communicate with each state. And, you know, there's still some states like Oregon and New Mexico that have their own
Own little
system.
deal. But anyway, back to the St. George, Utah.
So St. George, Utah.
Park her up.
So I had this spread axle trailer, and I had switches for each axle on the trailer. And I wasn't heavy, but I thought, I wonder just how accurate these scales are. So I came across out on the freeway, and I dumped one of my trailer axles.
Yep.
Well, that put in excess of 20,000 pounds on the other one. And then as soon as I went across the weigh in motion, I balanced everything out. Normally, when you go across the scale, they'd just roll you across, you know, and you'd see your weights up there. But they'd roll you across, but then you had to go around and park anyway and take your Arizona card in. Well, this one day, and I was through there every week, this one day, they stopped me on the scale, weighed my steering, stopped me, weighed my driver, stopped me, weighed each trailer axle individually, and oh man, I've done it this time. Go around and park and walk in and talk to the gal. Like, I don't remember her now, but I knew her name at the time because I saw her every week. And I said, what's going on? Normally you don't stop me on every axle. And she says, I don't know. There's something goofy about our new system out there. It showed you had like X amount of weight on one trailer axle. Oh, geez, that's bad. You know?
New technology.
That was about the time I thought, you know, you're starting to entertain yourselves in ways that are going to get really expensive. So. Not as expensive as Russ's ways of entertaining himself, but,
Right.
but close.
Yeah, those can get kind of. So that, yeah, I guess being away from you had children at that stage.
Yeah.
Being away from the house.
Yeah, it was a combination of boredom and not spending enough time around the kids.
How old were the kids at that stage?
Oh, Lord, I don't know. I think my oldest daughter was getting into high school, and the son was in probably junior high age, and youngest daughter was in grade school still.
Probably about a good time to be a little bit more present.
And I was never gone more than, I think the most I was ever gone was 14 days at a time. But typically I was back through every week. But, you know, at the time, I get home, I got to do paperwork, I got to work on the truck. Okay, it's time to go. You know,
Yeah.
we might get to have a few meals together, and that was it. So it was time.
It's not an industry that I generally recommend to young guys with wife and young kids at the house. It certainly suits a single man just fine.
Yeah. Well, you miss a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you only got so many years to before they're gone. So, sold truck and trailer and back into construction in 1998.
Yep. Well, there was a few years there. It's kind of funny. Fella in Shoshone there noticed that my truck wasn't parked there anymore, and he called me up. Shoshone, Idaho, was still a real little town. It was a little town then, so everybody pretty well kept tabs on what everybody was doing. And he called me up and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't see your truck." I said, "I sold it." He said, "Well, what are you doing?" "Oh, nothing right now." And, "You want to drive dump truck for me?" "Sure." Well, on the ride up the next day, up to Bellevue, got to talking to him and what I'd done and whatnot. Well, I used to work for this other fella, and he knew him. And I never did drive that dump truck. He put me right in an excavator, and away we went.
Okay.
Moving dirt. But did that for 2 or 3 years bouncing around, just doing little stuff for various people around Shoshone, and then went to work for, I was hired out of there, but I went to work and did all my work around Swan Valley, Idaho for a company for 10 years.
Is that for Rocking T Construction?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Cool.
Treated me well, taught me a lot of stuff.
Let me check. I was going to check, make sure the
Yeah, we don't want to miss any of this.
Riveting stuff. You'd be surprised. Oh, for about 10 years. What got you the idea of doing the construction yourself? Did you get bored again, or?
No, wasn't bored. After a certain number of years, you just feel like you're smart enough you could do this better on your own, and had to try it. And there were some other things. They treated me well, but it was just time to try something different. And so I thought, well, plus there was a particular landscape architect that really convinced me into going to business for ourselves, and he gave us our first work and whatnot. And so, sure, we'll try it. And so here we are 15 years later, and we might make it.
I guess now's the time to explain what you do. You're known as Oxbow on TTR, but maybe people don't know exactly. Yes, it involves trucks and trailers and equipment, but I think what you do is rather fascinating. I never would have kind of considered it. So, can you give us a rundown of exactly what the business does?
Sure. We started in 2008, right before the economy fell on its face. My crystal ball was a little fuzzy, is my saying about that. But so it was challenging to get work and whatnot. But I had done some with the previous contractor, not very much, but some stream channel, river restoration work, wetland creation work, and that was available to us. I scoured the government websites for the Forest Service work and whatnot, and we go all over the place doing it. But we sort of created a niche doing wetland restoration, stream channel restoration, habitat enhancement work, and essentially it boils down to a lot of it is mine reclamations, where they have routed the river over to one side of a canyon so that they could either dredge or otherwise mine the area.
Yeah.
And the rivers never get put back. And sometimes they don't look bad, but they end up just being one long straight riffle, not good resting habitat and so forth for the fish. So a lot of agencies, Forest Service, BLM, and then a lot of conservation agencies like Trout Unlimited and the Nature Conservancy get grant money and whatnot to restore habitat. And then where we are in Idaho, where there's anadromous fish, which are ocean-going fish, there's a lot of money spent by Bonneville Power Administration and Pacific Salmon Recovery to enhance spawning habitat for listed species of fish like Chinook salmon and
Right.
sockeye and steelhead and lamprey.
Okay.
So we were able to find enough work to keep our head above water doing that, and it developed to, that's about 99% of what we do now.
Right.
A lot of private work, conservation agency work, land trusts, whatnot. And then we haven't done as much Forest Service work recently, but it becomes, if I don't need to go to northern Idaho to work, then why would I? Why would we? So we stay a little closer to home now because there's a lot more work within a couple 100 miles.
Okay. And you got 4 employees and yourself and your wife?
Yes.
Okay. And 3 trucks, I think you said?
Yeah, we have top of the line stuff, huh, Rex?
Rex, you must have had the pleasure of running some of this equipment?
He won't let me in the Blue Monster, but other than that, all of them.
What's the Blue Monster?
You got to kind of caress her, every day is a different thing.
Is it one of those, what's that sound and how much is it going to cost me kind of trucks?
Yeah. Well, no, it's been pretty good, but it's our low boy tractor. It's an old 89 feet with a B model, nothing special. It does have 2-speed rear ends, 46,000 pound rears and a tag axle and the low boy, and it's that's kind of my baby. And then we have another 89. It's a 378. The other one's a 379. We bought it while we were kind of rebuilding the blue one at an auction at Ritchie Brothers for $19,000.
Okay.
We've probably spent, I don't know, maybe 1,000 in repairs, and it just
Keeps on
it's
trucking
just
along.
there, and we don't use it hardly any. And we bought right now our flatbed and built some bunks on it to haul root wads which are used in stream channel restoration for bank stabilization and fish habitat.
I actually bring the root wads in and,
So you're bringing the tree with the root wad.
okay.
And a lot of times you end up hauling them, and you can haul in a side dump, but you can't get very many in.
Yep.
You might get, if they're good size, you might get 6. Well, these bunks that we built, we can probably get 16 or so of pretty good size ones, and it's just a 3-sided box on the front and another one on the back, and it's open in the middle with one just kind of a log bunk, so you can stuff all the root wads, stagger them and stuff them in the ends, and it contains the roots, so you don't have to worry about over width and
Okay.
whatnot.
Where do you get these root wads from? Like nurseries or?
No, it varies. There's a lot of times that we have a logger friend that gets timber sales, and if he knows what we're after, he can often get permission just to tip the whole tree over and harvest them that way. There's a lot of site development that's trying to get rid of trees. It depends
Yep.
if they're cottonwoods or conifers, depends what's required. But it's kind of a commodity actually in our business. And so most of the contracts, either the contractor has to supply the wood or they do that under a separate contractor, so the materials are already on site.
Right.
So cottonwoods, are bigger, heavier, harder to deal with. There's a lot of those in the area, and there's a lot of conifers too in certain areas, but trucking them a couple 100 miles or 150 miles is pretty common.
Okay. And I think you said you got a dump truck recently. What's that for?
Just everybody needs a dump truck.
Oh, yeah. They come in handy.
No, we haul, we use a lot of good size rock, 3-foot rock and down, 4-foot rock and down, and so we can haul that in it. Haul gravel to my yard to cover it up. It doesn't do a lot, but Rex has hauled quite a bit of. We needed to buy river cobble or pit run for jobs to build riffles and whatnot out of, and so we'd haul all that with it. And this summer this summer we'll be hauling material up to Ellis, Idaho for a job that we have, and a lot of rock. We'll probably rent a side dump again to haul most of that because of the distance, but we'll use that to haul it from where we can stage it down to where we need it.
You said initially starting off, you rented a lot of equipment until that became unavailable and you had to start buying. So what equipment would you normally take to a job site?
It kind of depends on the size of the work. Always an excavator with a thumb, or 2 or 3, depends.
What's a thumb?
So on a typical excavator, you have the boom and you have a stick and then you have the bucket.
Okay.
Well, a thumb is a opposable thumb, so you can actually
Oh, right. Yep.
pick up
Grapple.
individual rocks, trees, and
Yep.
and that's necessary for all our current. We now have 2 excavators with thumbs on them, so we'll always have one of those. Sometimes a bigger excavator if there's a lot of earth to move. We still have one on rent now, a long reach excavator that we'll probably convert to a purchase here pretty soon. Dozer, not always used. It sort of depends on the job. We've had track trucks rented. They're kind of a necessary evil,
Yep.
but they're rubber track trucks, and the house is kind of like an excavator that can spin. And so in really wet areas, you can drive straight in, spin and dump and drive straight out, and not have to tear up the sod or
Unnecessarily.
yeah, so you're not getting stuck as much in those. In the past, we've rented a lot of articulated haul trucks, which a lot of people call them wiggle wagons or whatnot. And then that's the most of what we rent.
Okay. And that's, I guess that's where the money starts coming in, is the price of the equipment. If you're, like, you were renting it and that was working out well until supply got short and you had to delve into buying it.
Yeah, we deal exclusively with our local cat dealer. I think it's good product, but that's not so much necessarily that it's any better than other brand, but the dealer support has been phenomenal for us.
Yep.
And a little pissant company like ours, we're still able to, if we give them a little notice, hey, I need 2 haul trucks, I need a dozer, I need a blade, I need this, I need that, and they gathered up, and it was really good because they would actually tell you, well, come, your job's starting in the middle of June. Well, you start getting this equipment out of our yard in May. We won't start the rent till you need it, but we want to get it out.
Right.
So other people aren't saying, well, I wanted to rent that. And anyway, that worked really good up until about 3 years ago, or basically when COVID started. And then all of a sudden, there was no availability to rent equipment. And we had purchased one excavator at that time because we always used the excavator, but we were still renting everything else. And it was working great for me because if it's broke, you just call them and tell them, hey, bring me another machine or come fix it or whatever, no cost. I mean, the rent was substantial, but as soon as you're done with the job, you get rid of it and the payment on that stops. Well, then when equipment wasn't available and we had bid work that we needed a certain amount of equipment for, we didn't have the choice anymore, and so we started buying more since then. So
How much was the excavator when you bought it?
the first one, I believe, was $135,000. And that was a used machine. It had come out of the rental fleet. We still have it. It's still, that was 2014 when we bought it. 20 below, thing starts right up. It's the most reliable piece of equipment we have. And then, we had a pretty good sized job. We had 100,000 yards to move and phased over 2 years for that part of it. It was restoration, but it was mine reclamation on the Yankee Fork, where there's a bunch of dredge tailings that had to be moved to recreate room for the floodplain of the river. So we bought a used 345D excavator, cat excavator just specifically for that job, with the intent, okay, we're going to need it 3 years here. We can sell it when we're done because it's a big excavator for us, and it's a little harder to haul and whatnot. Well, we've since paid it off, and now, boy, when you need it or when you can use it, it saves you so much money because it's a 3.5 yard bucket. It just moves material so much faster than the others.
Right.
And now if we don't need it, it doesn't cost us too much to just have it sit.
So now your purchase to rented ratio is what, about 50-50? I guess if you included the trucks and trailers and all the equipment.
We were still probably only owned about 30% of what we would have on a job.
Okay.
And then this last year we bought a brand new excavator, mainly because our other one is starting to get some age on it, and if it was to go down for a great period of time and I couldn't rent one, then, well, plus we have the GPS capabilities on them, and you can in some circumstances, but it's harder to rent one that's set up to receive the GPS.
Okay.
And we really need that, so you kind of get forced into having to spend money on this stuff to ensure that you can do the job that you told them that you could do.
Right. And you said once you adopted the GPS technology, you'd never go back to using transits and
No, it's
a
pretty
world
nice.
apart.
It's frustrating because there's still areas, even though, well, we've just subscribed to a new service that gives us access to more satellites. So we have at least 30 satellites now, so your accuracy is really close. But if you get in a big wood canopy or in a steep canyon, then you lose GPS, and so occasionally we have to resort to the old way of going about things, or you just take advantage of it while you have it, and okay, I know this is here and I know this is here, and oh, I lost it. Well, I can build this far anyway. So
Gotcha.
it's still not a perfect world because you can't use it in a heavy canopy of trees very effectively. And funny thing is, a lot of rivers are in amongst heavy canopies of trees. So
Yep. So what's the plan with the business going forward? You were born in 58,
yeah,
makes you 65.
64. I'll be 65 this year. Yep.
Okay.
Having to deal with Medicare and all that stuff pretty soon.
Is one of your employees your son?
Yes.
Is he interested in taking over the business maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He and when I started, our other key employee started with me in 2008 or 2009, and then my son was back in Lexington working on a thoroughbred farm, but he came home and went to work for us too, and we've been really fortunate to have the same small core guys that worked together doing this for since then, and I don't know how other companies manage to go through, you know, tons of new employees all the time and learn what you do and whatnot, but we've
Yeah.
been really fortunate to keep the core guys, and hopefully we can get the business to where it's has no debt and we can turn it over to them and say, there you go.
Have at it.
Yep.
Draw some Social Security and enjoy some
Yeah.
afternoons on the porch.
Pay me $500 a month and a bottle of whiskey every once in a while, and
You'll be set.
I'll be good. Good whiskey.
Decent whiskey.
Good, yes.
At $500 a month.
Yeah.
Well, I've run out of questions.
Well,
Guess how about we have a break and decide what we're going to lie about.
assess the situation.
Assess the situation. Maybe some truck driver lies.